Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com and welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Phone Dog Live, the show, the podcast, whatever. Welcome to everyone who is here. If you're watching this live, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining the show. If you are watching the recording of this, welcome to you also, and thanks again for joining the show. As you saw in the introduction, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching the recording of it, you can check out the timeline in the description below the YouTube video because there's a timeline there, and you can use that to kind of jump around and listen to whatever topic you want to listen to. So you don't have to watch the whole thing because it's an hour long, and not everyone has an hour. I don't have an hour. I mean, I do because I'm here, but if I weren't here, I would be doing other stuff, so I can understand the time constraint. But we do have a pretty good show planned today. And I will try not to ramble and talk about myself because apparently that's a problem. I don't know. I don't mean to. I get conversational. I just start talking and then I start talking about other stuff that doesn't matter. I don't know. Half of it, it's not entirely my fault. Part of it is that you guys ask. Like you ask me things and then I want to answer. Like I want to explain or tell you how I feel about something and then you get all mad. I'm just like, what? Don't ask if you don't want to know. Anyway. So we have a good show, and we are going to start with, I thought we would start with new iPhone stuff, rumors. Obviously this is all like just completely speculation, and so but anyway, the speculation is that the new iPhone will have a larger display, which is actually not really anything new. I mean, that's something that we've heard for a couple of years now, actually, not just with this new iPhone. Sorry, I rocked the table. Not just with this new iPhone, but actually with the iPhone 4S. We might have heard it all the way back with the iPhone 4 that, it would have a larger display, and obviously that hasn't, transpired yet into real events, but it's possible. Here's open. It's possible that the next iPhone could have a larger display. And I think we just keep thinking that maybe if we talk about it long enough, it'll actually happen. And it's been 2 years now, so this might actually be a possibility. It could actually happen. This is the latest rumor, and of course we've been hearing these reports from everywhere. But the latest one is from 9to5Mac, and it's actually kind of approaching it from a different angle. Actually, that's a different report. That's the iPod Touch report. But the 9to5Mac report is from a source working with Apple, and they say that Apple is testing a number of new iPhones, and two of them will feature. The two will feature a larger display featuring a 3.95-inch screen with a resolution of 1136 by 640. Which is pretty good resolution, actually. It should be pretty amazing. Now, they said that the screen will have the same width as the 3.5-inch display. It'll just be taller. And this is kind of different and kind of where I start to think, I don't know if that's actually going to happen, because the thing with Apple is that they really like their square displays. I mean, it's not quite square. It's like a 4:3 aspect ratio. But they really like that. Like the iPhone has that, the iPad has that, even though, on an iPad, on a tablet, you watch videos, that's in the commercials, you see them watching a video, and, you've got the letterboxing because it's a square tablet, which is why most other manufacturers create their tablets with, a 16:9 or kind of a elongated design, but for some reason Apple tends to like these kind of more squarish designs, and so now we're hearing that if it does have a 4-inch display, it would kind of break away from that mold, and it would have a 16:9 aspect ratio. So I don't know. I mean, it would be kind of interesting to see Apple really change its approach and really change its design theory that it's carried so far. But that's what their sources say. We'll have a 3.95-inch display. Now, they had an update to this story where they did a couple of other calculations and kind of moved some things around, and they said that it's possible that it could have a 3.99-inch display, which doesn't really seem that much of a difference. I mean, 3.95-inch, 3.99-inch, I mean, it's basically 4 inches, but the thing is that if it's actually 3.99 inches, then Apple could just say it's a 4-inch display because, it basically is, it's rounding to 4 inches. So maybe as more of a marketing scheme, I don't know, even though Apple is actually pretty big on marketing schemes, so they might actually do that. And again, hearing that the iPhone is going to have a larger display, again, been hearing it for years. We'll have to see if it actually happens. But I thought one kind of interesting thing about this report is that not only was Apple going to include a larger display on the new iPhone, but they were also going to do a couple of things within the software to really take advantage of that larger display, of having more screen real estate. So, for example, they're testing special versions of iOS 6 that include a couple of new things like a 5th row of app icons, since it'll be taller, to have an extra row of app icons, or possibly maybe at the bottom have more shortcuts there, or maybe fit in a little bit more in terms of the grid size. Also, we're hearing that they are testing extended app UIs that show more information. So I'm not entirely sure what all of that would involve. Possibly with folders, it could be a new design, or just the apps themselves that Apple designs, like calendar, reminders, the different apps they design. They could have things kind of moved around a little bit so you can fit more onto the screen. We don't have any specific examples, but it could be something like that. But I think the biggest thing is just obviously having a larger, an extra row of icons. That makes sense. If you're going to have a larger screen, you can either make everything bigger or add more stuff. And I think adding more stuff kind of makes sense. Except for, I don't know, with the iPad, they didn't really follow that design scheme. They kind of just blew up everything. And so you still have 4 icons, but they're ginormous. And you would think, we have more screen, let's add more icons. But I don't know. So maybe they'll do that, maybe they won't. But that's the report that we're hearing, that it could be not just a new screen or a larger screen, but software that really takes advantage of that screen. Could this possibly mean that we will see widgets? I don't know. That's something that has been thrown around a lot. In fact, if you watch Aaron's, he recently posted a video of things that he wanted to be added to the iPhone, and specifically this one was talking about software, so iOS 6. And a couple of the things that he talked about was more larger grid, with more apps in the grid, and possibly more shortcuts down at the bottom. And he cited as an example, he'd been carrying the Galaxy Note for, you guys know he did a 30-day challenge, so he'd been carrying it around for about a month. And because it has such a large display, you can, instead of having just 4 shortcuts at the bottom, you can have 5, which is actually really helpful. I know for me personally, there's a couple of apps that I would like to have down at the bottom continuously. Now, obviously, you can have those shortcuts on the screen, so it's not like you have to go digging around in the app drawer, but just to have them constantly there no matter which home screen you're actually on, it just saves that split second. And sometimes, for some people, when time is money, that's kind of a big thing. And just having 5 shortcuts, I don't know if Apple would actually do that, but one thing that he mentioned is just adding an extra row of icons to the grid, and I think that makes complete sense. But instead of maybe not adding an extra row, maybe widgets instead. And again, been thrown around. I've personally have been a little bit skeptical, I guess is the word. Obviously, it's interesting. I don't know if people realize this. Widgets were around, before Android. If you look at macOS 10, there's widgets. There's a page for widgets. It's incredibly inconvenient because you can kind of easily get to it, but you have to scroll over to a separate page on your desktop. And of course you can use the trackpad shortcuts, the touch controls to easily scroll over to it, but it's still kind of inconvenient. I would like to have it somewhere, up in the top bar at the top of the screen, or maybe at the bottom. But anyway, the idea is that it's there, and widgets are actually something that Apple has been using. So it's not completely radical for Apple to implement widgets because they already do that in their desktop and laptop operating system. But I think just, one of the reasons why I've been so skeptical is just because widgets in terms of a smartphone OS has really been Android's thing, and no other operating system really has it in that exact same way. Now, Windows Phone has live tiles, which is actually pretty much the same idea. You have specified sections of the screen, or however you want to define it, that give you live updates that you can easily use to easily access a certain app, that basically live updates information and shows it to you right on the home screen without having to actually open that app. Windows Phone has the same concept, but it's still widgets, that's Android. And so if Apple were to do that with iOS, it couldn't just be widgets. It couldn't just be like the Facebook widget looking exactly the same way it does on Android, because that would be dumb. They would have to find a way to kind of, do what Microsoft did, to take that idea, but to make it look completely different, to still deliver the same information, still be live updating on your home screen, but to make it look completely different. And that's what Apple would have to do. I mean, there's no way that they could just straight up copy widgets. Then again, they could, considering they straight up copied Android's notification system, but I have a feeling, I've been kind of skeptical about widgets. I just don't think it would make sense for Apple to just all of a sudden add widgets, because then it would basically look like Android, and that's another thing. It's not just the fact that you have widgets that look exactly like Android, it's the fact that the entire OS basically, or the home screen at least, not the entire OS, that was taking it too far, but the home screen would look exactly like Android. It would be a grid of icons with some widgets, and that's basically what Android is. And so to add that, so those are kind of my reasonings of why I don't exactly think that widgets will be added. But then again, if they were added, I mean, a lot of people would love it. They already kind of had that concept in the notification panel. When you slide down, you can have stocks, weather. I think that's it. There might be one other thing that I'm missing, but you can have that, which is really useful. Honestly, one of the only widgets that I use when I'm using an Android phone is a weather widget. I kind of use a Slack or radio widget, but not really. I haven't found a Twitter widget that I really like. And like on my Windows Phone device, I use a Twitter live tile that tells me new mentions and all of that. But for some reason on Android, I could never find a Twitter widget that I like. So anyway, that's a possibility. Now that it's going to have a larger display, more screen real estate, either an extra row of icons or widgets, who knows. The next report that kind of goes along with this is actually, like I mentioned earlier when I got mixed up, this is kind of taking it from a different angle, because the leak, it's actually a leaked image, and I'll show you guys. It's actually not the iPhone, it's an iPod Touch panel. And of course, the iPod Touch and the iPhone have really looked the same ever since the beginning. So I mean, this is, you could say, okay, look at the iPod Touch panel. It clearly has a larger display. Again, following that same idea that it's not going to be wider, that they're actually going to adopt this 16:9 aspect ratio. But clearly it's about a 4-inch display, and since the iPod Touch and the iPhone have always looked similar, it's a possibility that if this really is a real iPod Touch panel, that the new iPhone could also have a larger display as well. Now, the fun thing about that is that the iPod Touch, and all of the iPods, generally get updated sometime around the beginning of school. July, August, September. It usually gets updated around that time. Now, last year weren't really any updates. But before that, every year it was around school time, we always saw new iPods. And so it would be interesting to see, if Apple is daring enough, or, if they would release, if the iPod Touch really does have a larger display, if they'll release it, at the same time that they usually do before school starts. Because if you do that, if they release an iPod Touch with a larger display, around the same time they always do, then they're basically giving up that the new iPhone will also have a larger display. I mean, it's not 100% sure, but I mean, I would be shocked if the iPod Touch had a larger screen and the iPhone didn't. I mean, there would really be no point to that. So it'll be kind of fun, if the iPhone isn't announced in June when it was previously. It'll be fun, when that event rolls around, if we do see this iPod Touch with a larger screen. And if we don't, does that mean that the iPhone won't have a larger screen? Again, because they kind of have always looked similar. So if we have a new iPod Touch with the same size screen, does that mean the iPhone? I mean, there's so many scenarios. It's like back and forth. I mean, you kind of go around in circles, but it's kind of just fun to speculate about. We are hearing that the new iPhone will be released in the fall. So if it's released in the summertime, then obviously this new iPod Touch doesn't even matter because it's going to be, the iPhone will be released before the iPod. But we're hearing that it'll be released in the fall, not the summer. So that's the latest larger display. And I would like to see a larger screen. Would I be interested in an iPhone if it had a larger screen? Not necessarily. Just because me personally, it's the operating system to me that I really don't like. It's a grid of icons. Not really a whole lot of updates going on there live except for numbers. I mean, widgets are probably the most robust live update system on your home screen. After that, I would have to say live tiles on Windows Phone because it's kind of the same concept, not quite as much information, but you still get the live updates. And then obviously iOS has nothing. So I would like, in order for me to be enticed by iOS, it would have to have something like that, whether widgets, live tiles. It would have to have something like that. And like I said, I already don't think that it's going to, but if it did, I would be kind of enticed by that. And the larger screen, would definitely help. Because I already love the hardware. I've already, the iPhone 4, iPhone 4S, I say is the best looking phone on the market. Although HTC is really catching up with their 1X and the 1S and the Evo 4G LTE. Those are pretty hot phones. And then the camera. The iPhone 4S camera is one of the best on the market. It was the best for a long time, and now maybe, I don't know, the 1X might be able to dethrone that, but I think the 4S, just one of the best cameras on the market. So, if it did have a larger screen, if they added a couple of software features that really took advantage of the larger screen, that being widgets, I might be enticed, but then again, that's a lot to ask for, especially from Apple, who, just doesn't budge on pretty much anything. So, let's move on. We're going to move on to Android now, and we're going to talk about a topic that pretty much every Android fan hates. And I'm not going to say the word, but I'm just going to say Android updates, or rather the lack thereof. I'm not going to say the F word, well, not that F word, but the FR word, fragmentation. Okay, I didn't say it. But that's what I'm talking about. That's what we're going to talk about. Android updates. Now, first of all, HTC has released an updated list of which phones will get ice cream sandwich. Motorola has released an updated list of which phones will get ice cream sandwich. And Sony Ericsson has given us also a couple of updates on which phones will get ice cream sandwich. Which for the most part is great because you've got phones like the Amaze 4G, the Desire S, the Evo 3D, the Sensation XE, the HTC Rime. You got all these great phones. You're now going to be getting ice cream sandwich. It's going to be awesome. Yay! But the problem is the phones that are not getting ice cream sandwich. And it makes absolutely no sense. Okay, there's a little bit of sense to it, but honestly, not really. And this is something that I harp on a lot. And I've heard Android fans, they just hate it whenever I talk about Android updates, because my thing is that I think it's ridiculous that all Android phones do not get updates. I mean, I just think that's ridiculous. Now, I understand no OS is perfect, even when it comes to updates. With Windows Phone, yes, current Windows Phone devices will not get Windows Phone 8. At least that's what we're hearing right now. They will not get Windows Phone 8. Which I think is a huge mistake, and I hate that. And that's actually one of the reasons why I'm hesitant to upgrade right now, because, I'm going to get a phone now, be under contract, and in 6 months, when Windows Phone 8 comes out, it's not going to get that update. which is something that you Android fans have been dealing with for a couple of years now. But so that is definitely a problem. However, at least for me, the difference is that I'm confident that once Windows Phone 8 devices do come out, they'll continue to receive updates. So this isn't going to be something that happens every single time. At least it hasn't yet. With Windows Phone 7, Windows Phone 7.5, they all got Windows Phone 7.5. So, past history would show, to me at least, that once Windows Phone 8 devices do come out, they'll all receive upgrades. With iOS, yes, not every single iPhone generation gets the iOS update. With iOS 5, the original iPhone did not get iOS 5. However, at least 2 generations do, which think about it, accounts for 2 years, which I think makes sense. You get a phone, you get the iPhone when it first comes out, and then when your contract is up, and you're not going to get that update anymore because your phone is 2 years old, well, it's okay because the new iPhone is out and you can get that one. So, at least you've got a couple of years where you are going to get updates. With Android, you don't know what you're going to get. You really don't. I mean, you could have a phone and then in 6 months a new update comes out and you don't get it. You could have a phone that's, you have, and then 6 months later an update comes out and you do get it. You never know what you're going to get. And there's nothing wrong with not getting an update, because I understand there's the hardware requirements. There aren't actually, so far as I can tell, there aren't strict hardware requirements for Android phones. It's kind of just manufacturer discretion. But I understand, sometimes you just can't get the update. I get that, not every iPhone gets an update. The same thing with Windows Phone, like I mentioned. It's, nobody's perfect, so nothing wrong with not getting an update. However, Ice Cream Sandwich in particular is a huge update. It brings several new features and improvements, and, maybe customers won't notice that they don't have the update. I have a lot of Android fans saying that to me. The average customer, they won't even know if they don't get gingerbread or ice cream sandwich, or if they didn't get froyo. They're not even going to know. They're not going to notice. And I'm just like, yeah, but I mean, is that really the way you want to run your business? I mean, shortchange your customers and hope that they don't notice? I mean, so yeah, maybe they don't need the update because they won't notice it, but why not update it? I mean, just because I don't know that I should get an update doesn't mean that I don't deserve it. I mean, that's not my responsibility. It's not my responsibility to tell the manufacturer, hey, send me my update. And then if I don't, well, you didn't tell us. No, that's your responsibility. You send us the updates. Who cares if I don't know? It's not my job to know. You send me the updates. So that's my thing. I understand most consumers, they don't know anything about updates, but they still deserve to have it. I mean, why not? Why not send out the update? So anyway, that's my reasoning. And this is, so the reason why this topic has come up is because the Droid 3 will not get Ice Cream Sandwich. The Droid X2 will not get Ice Cream Sandwich. And then therefore the other versions, like the Milestone 3 and Milestone X2, same phones, they also won't get Ice Cream Sandwich. Whereas the Atrix 2 will get Ice Cream Sandwich, the Bionic will get Ice Cream Sandwich, the Razr and the Razr Max will get Ice Cream Sandwich. So here's my thing. Think about the Atrix. The Motorola Atrix came out in March 2011. The Droid 3 came out in July, which is March, April, May, June, July. That's 5 months. 5 months later, the Droid 3 came out, and it will not get Ice Cream Sandwich, whereas the phone that came out 5 months before that will get Ice Cream Sandwich. The timeline to me just does not make any sense there. Same thing with the Droid X2. That came out in May. It will not get Ice Cream Sandwich. And so I was thinking, okay, well, maybe the timeline, just kind of throw that out the window. There's got to be like some hardware requirements. So like, for example, the Droid 3 has 512 megabytes of RAM. The Droid X2 has 512 megabytes of RAM, whereas all the phones by Motorola that are getting Ice Cream Sandwich, they have 1 gigabyte. The Atrix, Atrix 2, Bionic, all of those are Razr, they have 1 gigabyte of RAM. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's the hardware requirements. 512 megabytes, 1 gigabyte, I can understand that. However, if you look at Sony Ericsson's update timeline, that pretty much throws out hardware requirements out the window, because several of those phones that are getting updated to Ice Cream Sandwich do only have 512 megabytes of RAM. You've got the Xperia Mini Pro Active, Xperia P, Xperia U, Xperia Arc. Actually, the Xperia P has a gigabyte, but the Xperia Arc, Xperia Neo, and the Live with Walkman, those all have 512 megabytes of RAM, and they can handle Ice Cream Sandwich. On top of that, they've got Sony Ericsson's UI, which is an incredibly heavy UI, which I've talked about, and yet they're still getting ICS. And then on top of that, you think, well, maybe it's internal memory. Like, I'm just grasping at straws here. Maybe it's internal memory. Well, the Xperia Live with Walkman and the Xperia Neo and the Xperia Arc, those all have 320 megabytes of RAM, or 320 megabytes of internal storage. And all of these phones, save for the Xperia P, all have a single core processor. And they're still getting Ice Cream Sandwich with 512 megabytes of RAM, a single core processor, and 320 megabytes of internal memory. And yet, the Xperia Play, which also has 512 megabytes of RAM, also has a single core processor, but it's not getting Ice Cream Sandwich. Like, how does that make any sense whatsoever? And then, you've got phones like the Droid 3 with a dual-core processor, 16 gigabytes of internal memory, and only 512 megabytes of RAM, and it's not getting Ice Cream Sandwich. If you're confused, you should be, because this makes absolutely no sense. There's no continuity here, and the reason is because, from what I can figure out from the lack of any logic in this system, the only logic I can find is that there are no minimum hardware requirements, and it's really just up to the manufacturer discretion. So if Motorola thinks, well, the Droid 3, it can't run Ice Cream Sandwich properly, or maybe it could if we really tried, but we don't really want to try, so we'll just screw it and say it's not getting it. If Motorola thinks, no, it can't run it, then it's not going to get the update. Whereas Sony Ericsson thinks, well, it's 512 megabytes of RAM, 320 internal storage, single core processor, yeah, I can run it, we'll test it, boom, it works, we'll get it out. It's up to each individual manufacturer, which, whatever, for freedom, everyone makes their own decisions. I get that, it's Android's thing. But when it comes to updates, it's a terrible system. Google needs to put its foot down and say, no, these are the minimum hardware requirements, or the maximum, whatever you want to call it. And these phones will get Ice Cream Sandwich. If a Sony Ericsson phone that has a single core processor and 512 megabytes of RAM can run Ice Cream Sandwich, then a Motorola phone that has a dual core processor, 16 gigabytes of internal storage, and 512 megabytes of RAM can run Ice Cream Sandwich. I don't care what anybody says. Make it work, okay? This is what I'm saying. Make it work. If I had a Droid 3, I would be friggin' pissed off right now. I'm already pissed off, and I don't even have a Droid 3. I'm going to calm down now. It really upsets me, this whole update thing, because there is absolutely there's no continuity, there's no organization, there's no system. It's just whatever anybody wants to do. If Motorola wants to send out an update, they might not. If Sony Ericsson wants to, if HTC wants to, maybe they will, maybe they won't. There's no system, and Google I know they don't want to be too closed. I know they're afraid of, losing their open, whatever they've got going on there. But customers deserve to get updates. We just do, at least for 18 months. That's what the Android Update Alliance is all about. Getting updates for phones for at least 18 months. And the Droid 3, which came out in July, is not even 12 months old. It is still not going to get an update. That's unacceptable. What if I were under contract and I'm not going to get this huge update that has a new amazing UI with new features and new improvements? I'm not going to get that just because, what, you don't think it can work? I don't know. That to me is just upsetting. And then, you think about the HTC Flyer. The HTC Flyer will also not be getting Ice Cream Sandwich, but yet it has 1 gigabyte of RAM. Like, where's the sense in that? I mean, so if you say, okay, it has to have a gigabyte of RAM in order to get ICS, well, the Flyer has 1 gigabyte of RAM. Why is it not getting Ice Cream Sandwich? There's no organization to it, and I think it's ridiculous, and I agree with Taylor. He also wrote an article voicing his opinions on this, Taylor Martin. He said it's unacceptable for Motorola to not update the Droid 3 and the Droid X2 to Android 4.0. And like he brings out, maybe it would take more time and effort for Motorola to make it work on phones like the Droid 3 or the Droid X2. They have a dual-core processor, so it shouldn't be that difficult. But, maybe it would take a little bit of extra time. But they need to do it. Sony Ericsson did it for some of their phones, but not for the most popular phone they have, the Xperia Play, which is kind of dumb. But, Sony Ericsson made it work for some of their phones, the phones that they felt like doing it on. So why can't Motorola put the effort into doing it? And we know it's possible because, as you Android fans remind me all the time, not getting an official update doesn't matter because I can just root my phone and get a ROM, that has the update. So if you can do it, why can't manufacturers do it? That's what I'm saying. Anyway, we're going to get off that topic before my head explodes. But I just, it's just frustrating. And I can imagine if I did have one of those phones, if I wasn't under contract, if I had the Droid 3 or the Droid X2 or the Xperia Play, and I'm only, 1 year? Not even a year. Okay, the Xperia Play came out a year ago tomorrow. So maybe a year into my contract, and I'm not going to get an update that is out there. It's out there. It's not like it's, not available. It's out there. I would like to have it, and I'm not going to get it because, and then I shouldn't care about that. I shouldn't care about getting an update. When is that ever okay? I mean, when is that ever fine? I mean, how did this become the norm? Anyway, moving on. We're going to move on. And if you want to kill me right now, that's fine. Or if you want to punch my face in, that's fine. If you're an Android fan and I hurt your feelings, I'm sorry, but this is just the way I feel. It's the updates. This is kind of a big story. Obviously not as big as the two stories that we just talked about or the one that I just nearly had my head explode over. But kind of a big one. Some webOS employees... Actually, I want to read some of your comments just to see what you guys think about the Android updates. I'm just going to take a minute to pause and read read comments. Sydney, next topic, please. Hey, I feel strongly about that, okay? And they're talking about my hair. Okay, so as usual, you guys aren't even paying attention. Anyway, so let's move on to this next story. Some webOS Enyo employees, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, which it seems like Enyo would not be that difficult to pronounce, but it could be Enyo or Enyo, I don't know, Enyo. Employees are reportedly jumping from HP to Google, which is kind of a big deal. Enyo, this is... the application framework for webOS. It was introduced in the touchpad. It's basically what's going to keep webOS alive. It's the open source project to keep it available to any manufacturers or anyone that wants to use it. And now supposedly some of those important members are now just ditching the project and moving to Google. Now this is a report, possibly not true, but if it is, it's kind of a big deal. One of the people that supposedly is moving to Google is Matt McNulty, who is the head of the project. So that would be a huge blow to webOS. There's no word on exactly what those people are going to do once they get to Google, but I'm thinking obviously something with Android. Since webOS is a mobile platform, I'm assuming they would join the Android team, to some extent or in some form. But could this be a huge blow to webOS? I mean, could this be the beginning of the end? Which actually, the beginning of the end was a couple of years ago, but maybe not a couple of years, about a year ago. So, webOS, it might be dead. It might be dead. It might have been dead for a year, and we don't even know it. We've just been in denial. It's possible that people at HP, aren't even working on webOS, that these people in the Enyo project, they're not even really doing anything. It's just HP, kind of telling them to do it for, good PR so that people don't think they just abandoned the project that they spent $2 billion on. It could just be like, it's been dead and we don't even know it yet. So who knows if we'll ever see webOS again, but this is definitely something that could change that. And it's a shame. I mean, we've talked before about webOS, and I've always loved webOS. It was new, it was fresh. I mean, there were some things that definitely needed to be fixed, specifically with hardware. The original Pixie, didn't even support Wi-Fi, which was ridiculous. Other things, the processor, that was always behind, really needed to catch up in terms of, at the time, single core processors, but, then it became dual core processors, screen size. I mean, there were a lot of things where it really needed to just catch up. Actually kind of like Windows Phone is today. The hardware really needs to catch up. But the potential was there in the software. And I think, for being a new operating system, it was pretty amazing what they were able to do. And if you look at early versions of Android and you look at early versions of webOS, it's incredible. WebOS, even its first version that, at least that was released to the public, was incredibly polished, very refined. I mean, there were some things that needed to be fixed, but I mean, considering that it was the first version, it was incredible. Some of the UI features that were introduced in webOS, we're still seeing now in other operating systems. BlackBerry pretty much ripped off its multitasking interface. Windows Phone's multitasking interface is pretty much exactly the same way also. When you have make sure I don't have anything on here. When you have, the cards, this is something that we saw in webOS. BlackBerry, also has the same thing. There's a lot of just completely new UI elements that were introduced in webOS that people are still starting to implement into their operating systems. And so it was amazing, and then, comparing it to early versions of like Android, it took a while for Android to get polished, and it is now, and it looks polished and beautiful. But I mean, it just, compared to where they first started off, webOS was really ahead of its time. And so if this is the end of webOS, it's going to be sad. Obviously, life goes on. I'm not going to be like crying at night because webOS is gone. But no, I think, it just would be nice to have other options. I mean, now we have Android, we have iOS, Windows Phone kind of gaining traction, BlackBerry 10 possibly will gain some traction. So, maybe we'll have 4 operating systems, which I think is great. But, maybe a 5th one, it would be nice. But, if it can't be webOS, at least we still have Windows Phone and BlackBerry. Not that everyone has to go to Windows Phone or BlackBerry, but it's just the fact that of having options. Like, say, before Windows Phone and before, when BlackBerry was tanking and webOS was tanking, it was really just Android and iOS. And while there's nothing really inherently wrong with those operating systems, say you just don't like them. Maybe I just don't like the way iOS looks, or maybe a person just doesn't like the way Android looks or way they perform, or maybe, someone just doesn't like those operating systems. There were no other options, and it's just not the way it should be. And Android fans, you guys love options, and so you can understand this. People want options, outside of those 2 operating systems, and so now to have 2 other options, possibly, hopefully, BlackBerry 10, Windows Phone, it's just nice, for people who do want that. Of course, the majority of people apparently love Android and iOS, so it's not, not too big of a deal, but at least we have some other things to choose from. And I would like to have webOS as part of that group, but, it's not looking good. Here's a report that we could possibly see a Google Nexus tablet at Google I/O, which is going to be in June, from June 27th to June 29th. Seriously, off topic, but June is going to be freaking packed. So June 11th through the 15th, you've got WWDC, which is Apple, which is probably where we're going to see iOS 6. And then June 20th and 21st, Windows Phone Developer Summit. Now, that's just a developer event, so, it won't be like, we might not see too much cool stuff. But, then you've got Google I/O the very next week. So 3 weeks in a row, we've got first Apple, then Windows, then Google. So it's actually going to be pretty cool. But anyway, so Google I/O, June 27th to the 29th. And the report is that we could see the Nexus tablet. Now, as a recap, the Nexus tablet is supposedly going to be made by ASUS. It will have a quad-core Tegra 3 processor, and we heard reports that it would have a 7-inch display and would be incredibly inexpensive, supposedly priced at about $199, which is amazing. Now, my hope is that if it is that inexpensive, it still feels like a high-quality device. And I think, something like with the Kindle Fire, it's a great tablet. It's inexpensive, and the hardware is, I don't know if you can see this. I don't know if I've showed you guys. This is my Kindle Fire, and so I recently, back a couple months ago, I got a new MacBook Pro because mine was like 5 years old. Anyway, and so I took the stickers and put it on my Kindle Fire just because it's really dumb, and I like doing dumb stuff like that. It's also kind of ironic because I hate Apple, as you guys know, and so, I don't know, for some reason, it's kind of an inside joke with just me. Like, nobody else gets it, because if anybody else saw it, they would think it's an Apple tablet, or that I just love Apple, but it's kind of an inside joke with me that I hate Apple so much. Anyway, so the Kindle Fire, inexpensive, but kind of limited. Performance isn't awesome. The hardware, it's kind of thick. It looks great, but it's still, it feels like an inexpensive tablet. So I'm hoping that the Nexus tablet, if it is inexpensive, around $200, I hope that it still feels like a high-quality tablet. And, honestly, if anybody's going to do that, it would be ASUS. ASUS, their tablets, I mean, the Transformer Prime, the ePad Slider, their tablets, they're just hot. I mean, the designs, they just look incredibly attractive. Not attractive, that makes me sound weird, but just incredibly, like, you just want that tablet. It just looks good. And so I'm actually really excited about having a Nexus tablet designed by ASUS, because Motorola, I mean, the Zoom, not really a Nexus tablet, but it's kind of like hyped as that. And the Zoom was like friggin' ugly, and it was $800. So Google is like going complete opposite end of the spectrum there. Here they're gonna make it not just, reasonably priced, but also like really cheap, actually. So anyway, Sydney, you're gonna get sued. Why? Because of my sticker. Yeah, thankfully Apple doesn't care about me at all. Oh wait, no, I forgot. I'm paid by Apple and Google and Samsung, and pretty much every company pays me. At least that's what the commenters say. So, which is like, where is that check going? Because I would like to see that anyway. So no, I don't think I'll get sued. But to me, it's, I don't know, it's just funny. I'm kind of a dork. I do stupid stuff like that. Anyway, so Nexus tablet possibly at Google I/O, and whoever attends Google I/O could be getting one. That's the other rumor, is that Google will be passing out the Nexus tablet at Google I/O, which is what they did with the Galaxy Tab. They had a special developers edition of the Galaxy Tab, so they got that one. I think there was something else that people got at Google I/O. So that's all. That's the news, and we can move on now to the open Q&A. Sorry I got sidetracked there. Just somebody was talking about how they got divorced, and I was like, oh, that's kind of sad, and unrelated, but sad. Anyway, so yeah, we can move on to the open Q&A. So if you're on Ustream, leave your questions. I will try to answer them, and okay. And also on Facebook. I am also on Facebook. I'm trying to see if we need any moderators, but I think we're doing okay. So, and I can moderate now that I'm paying attention. Facebook. Okay. Even if the Droid 3 does get the update, what would even improve? Have you seen Ice Cream Sandwich? I don't know if you've actually seen it. It's kind of a huge update. It's 4.0. So let me put it to you this way. Your phone would be going from Android 2.3 to 4.0. Kind of a big update. Yeah. Sydney, what do you think Samsung Galaxy Note 2 will come? When do I think it will come? I don't know. Have we heard anything about that? I think we've heard like some sort of whispers about it, but nothing really solid. So I don't know. Any chance of the Note coming to Sprint? The Galaxy Note to Sprint. We heard that the Note will probably be coming to T-Mobile. That was a pretty solid rumor that we heard. But other than that, I don't think we've heard anything really solid. What do you think of the iPad mini rumors? I don't believe them at all. No. Thoughts on Starbucks? Love Starbucks. I go there a lot. I get a tall decaf, no foam, 3 raw sugar stirred latte. That's my drink. I know it sounds really picky. I don't mean for it to be. That's just the way that I like it. It's, I don't like foam. It gets in the way of my drink. I don't want all the extra poofy stuff. I just want to drink it. So I don't want foam. The sugar, people add cream and sugar to their coffee. Stirred, obviously, because I put sugar in it. So I like for them to stir it. Because, they don't stir it. I don't know if you know that, but they actually don't stir it. You have to tell them to stir it. And then decaf, because caffeine makes me go crazy. Yeah. Sydney, you switched back to Android from your Windows Phone 7 phone, correct? Yeah, I switched for about a month. The reason for me switching, it was really only for one thing. I started to miss the customization. And so that was why I switched. I did it for a month. I went back to Windows Phone. I still carried, the phone that I switched to was the 1S. I still carry it around. I just don't use it as much as I was for that month test thing. Why is Sprint making all of these 4G LTE phones if they don't have it yet? Well, they're building out their LTE network, so, they gotta have LTE phones. Okay, here's one from Facebook. Hi, Sydney, I saw a rumor a long time ago about an HTC phone called the Zeta. Is it true? Yeah, I do remember that phone. Let me see if we have anything new. Yeah, the Zeta. It was supposed to have a 2.5 gigahertz quad-core Qualcomm processor, a gig of RAM, a 4.5-inch 720p display, an 8-megapixel camera, Beats audio, and Android 4.0. Nothing new on that. Sorry. Another one from Facebook. Do you think the Galaxy S3 is that much of a difference from the T-Mobile Galaxy S2 to switch when it comes out? Yeah, so my thing about switching, I get asked this just, about different phones, not particularly the Galaxy S3, but, I always tell people when it comes to switching, if you've had your phone for, say, like 6 months to a year, or if your contract is up, which is, if you have the Galaxy S2, your contract probably isn't up, but if you've had your phone for a while, then yeah, go ahead and upgrade if you want to, but if you've only had it, actually, I would say probably a year for me would be the deadline. If you've only had it for like a month, 4 months, 6 months, you can upgrade if you have the extra cash, but really, if you're trying to upgrade every 4 months, you're going to be upgrading every 4 months, and you're going to be spending a lot of money always trying to have the latest and greatest, and it's just not worth it. Get a phone, be satisfied with it. That's what I would say. So for you guys, yeah, is it that much better, than the Galaxy S2? Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's probably going to be a good upgrade, but is it worth spending the extra money to, whatever you have to do, renew your contract, buy it full retail? No, I don't think so, unless you're a millionaire. In which case, tell you where I live. When is the USA going to get quad-core? They're working on it. They're working on processors. The problem is that current quad-core processors, they don't support the LTE bands that US carriers use. And so that's the problem. But they're working on processors that do, so hopefully soon. Will there be any more HTC One phones? Well, we're still waiting on the HTC One V. That's supposed to hit Virgin Mobile and Metro PCS, and I think US Cellular. But other than that, we're not expecting any more new ones. So I was wondering, if you have a 1.2 gigahertz dual core, does that mean you have 2.4 gigahertz? So a 1 gigahertz quad would be 4 gigahertz. I don't get it. 1.2 gigahertz. Right. I think, yes, when you combine it, correct me if I'm wrong, and I may be making myself look like an idiot here. Correct me if I'm wrong, that it's whenever you combine them, it adds up to whatever it is, 1.4 gigahertz or, 2 gigahertz. Okay. Tegra 3 Next chips will have LTE. Okay, there you go. Answer the question. What's the difference between HSPA Plus and LTE? HSPA, they're both based on GSM technologies, and actually when you look at the evolution of the GSM technology, LTE comes after HSPA Plus. So it would be like, GSM, 3G, and then HSPA, and then after that would be HSPA Plus, and then after that would be LTE. HSPA Plus, it stands for High Speed Packet Access. LTE is Long-Term Evolution. It's just it's different generations of GSM data technology. There, that would probably be the easiest way to explain it. And because it's different generations, the speeds tend to be different. However, in our real world, T-Mobile has given its HSPA Plus network steroids. So it's, in some areas, it's actually faster than like Verizon's LTE network. But once LTE actually gets built out the way that it's supposed to be and it progresses more to possibly LTE 2, LTE Advanced, LTE is naturally faster because it's the next generation. Do you think my Spurs will win it all this year, and who are you rooting for? Yeah, I do think the Spurs will win the championship. I like the Thunder, but they're just too flawed. They're a really good team, obviously. Obviously, they swept the Mavericks. They pretty much swept the Lakers. The Thunder are a really great team, but they have flaws. They don't have a true point guard. They have no post presence on offense. They rely on jump shots. Durant and Westbrook can drive, but they shoot a lot of jump shots. Harden, he can drive, but he shoots a lot of jump shots. They just have a lot of flaws. The Heat also obviously have a lot of flaws. They have 3 guys that score and really nobody else. They have no size. Their half-court offense is horrible. Now, with all of those flaws, both teams manage to be so good in certain areas that it really makes up for those flaws, but they still have flaws. And the thing with the Spurs is that they have no flaws. They're perfect in every way. Watching Spurs basketball, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's like, it's just gorgeous. And so I have the Spurs winning, but anything could happen. Okay, do you see the note on Sprint? No. Sydney, heard anything about a quad-core S4 processor? No. Sydney, I'm looking for a new phone on Verizon. Should I get the Trophy? No. Resound or Razer Max or Galaxy Nexus? Yeah, I would say between the Resound and the Razer Max, because the Galaxy Nexus, the camera is disappointing, and just a couple of things about it, just kind of, the Resound and Razer Max are really above the Galaxy Nexus. I know a lot of people wouldn't agree with me, but they really are. In between those two, I would probably go with the Resound. Personally, I don't like Motorola hardware, and I don't like Motorola's UI. Now, that's just me. So if you like it, then obviously go with the Razer Max. Or if you need amazing battery life, go with the Razer Max. But overall, I think I would say the Resound. You get, the free earbuds. It's an awesome phone. I would say between the Resound and the Razer Max. And, okay, here's what I'm going to say. Between those two, and you really can't go wrong with either one. So maybe check them out, see if you like the UI, which one you like better, and then both of them will be equally amazing. She loves sports. I do. I love basketball. My husband and I, we talk about basketball all day. I play basketball not every night, But on Sundays, we always play basketball. I've always loved sports. I don't know why. Heard about the Nexus tablet. Awesome. Is it true T-Mobile is merging with Metro PCS? That's a rumor. I don't know if it'll actually ever happen. I smell coffee. I think my husband made coffee, which he's not supposed to have more coffee today. Google acquires Motorola. Thoughts? My thoughts? Well, I mean, it's not really a surprise. I mean, it just went through, but that happened a couple of months ago, so I'm not really surprised. Why not the Trophy? It's rather old, yeah, and you could just get better. I mean, I love Windows Phone, but I'm not going to tell you to get a phone that's 2 years old. I'm just not. I would go with the Resound or the Razer Max. Will we see more buttonless phones like the Galaxy Nexus? Well, Ice Cream Sandwich, it makes use of virtual on-screen buttons. So theoretically, Android phones with Ice Cream Sandwich should not have buttons, whether they're physical or capacitive. So will we see more? I mean, we should, but, we've got new Ice Cream Sandwich phones being released with buttons. So, I don't know. Can you jump? Yes, I can jump. Sydney, do you think HTC will make a Twitter phone like the Status? I don't know. It's a good question. We haven't heard anything about it. Whose fault is it that Android updates are delayed? I've heard a lot of blame put on manufacturers, a lot of blame put on the carriers, that they're the ones who don't want the update, to get to their phones. In the end, I think Google is responsible, and that might not seem fair, but it's Google's operating system. So, it's kind of like, when you work somewhere, the boss always answers for everything. Even if it's an employee mistake, the boss is the one that hired him, the one that trained him. So in the end, it's the boss's fault. So yeah, the manufacturers, maybe they don't get it out in time and the carriers are holding it back. But if that's the case, then Google needs to say, guys, get this update out. This is the way it needs to be. We want our customers to have the best they can have. And so that's what I think. Sydney, favorite piece of jewelry? I don't know. I guess my wedding ring, probably. Let me check Facebook. I forgot about them for a couple of minutes. Okay. Do you feel that manufacturers have gone a little crazy with their overlays, example TouchWiz and Sense covering up ICS? I don't know. I've always liked custom UIs. I just always have. TouchWiz has always been my favorite. Lately, HTC Sense is growing on me. Have they gone crazy with it? No, I mean, as long as customers like it and buy it, then they can do whatever they want. And in some ways, it adds a new design, makes it look different. So I don't think they're going crazy. It only becomes a problem when it slows down the device, which it has in the past, but I think they're kind of getting over that. Or when it causes a phone to not get an update, and that's when it becomes a problem. We have 2 minutes left, so 2 minutes. Do you think Lamar Odom should have got paid for not even playing? Well, no, but, what are you going to do? There's not really anything you can do. I think it was awesome, what they did, putting him on the inactive list, because if they had just released him, he would have gone back to, like, the Lakers or some other team. And this way, they still have control over where he goes. He's not a free agent this summer, so they still have, they trade him. I think they're going to trade him. I don't think they're going to release him. They're probably going to trade him to a team that's going to release him, but, that's their problem. And he'll probably end up somewhere like New York or LA, but, whatever. He's a loser, and I've lost all respect for him. And honestly, I liked Lamar Odom. I mean, even when he played for the Lakers, everyone said he was a nice guy and a good husband, and so I had a lot of respect for him. And now I'm just like, wow, you are a loser. He's just a joke. He's an absolute joke. Chloe and Lamar is the worst show ever. Why doesn't HTC buy webOS? I guess they don't want to. What do you think about Android fragmentation? Don't even get me started, okay? Okay, so it's 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, wherever you are, depending on what time zone you're in. It's been an hour. It's been great. I've had a great time. Thanks, guys, for coming and watching the show. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks also for watching. Leave your comments. I read those. I try to respond to some if I can. But I guess other than that, I'll see you guys later, same time next week on Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern time on Ustream. If I missed a question, or if you just want brownie points, you can follow me on Twitter at phonedog_Sydney. But that's it. I'll see you guys later. Bye.